Hello, I'm Gwen Hill from Pine Ridge Baptist Church Sunday School Department, ladies class, and we are in the book of Daniel. It's very difficult, I'll just admit it. We are in chapter 7, and we are beginning with verse 13. Um, Daniel is separated into two groups. The first 6 chapters are historic. They are telling you about Daniel and his experiences. It's more or less in chronological order. But the last 6 are all prophecy. It's about his visions, it's about his dreams, and they are not in chronological order. He has 4 visions, and you will see him pull up elements of past visions and stick them in there to help us to understand what he's talking about. You will see him as an 80-plus-year-old man as he works, as he diligently works to record what the Lord wants him to. He is giving us a summary of what he's seeing and what he's hearing and what he's feeling. He's not giving us a detailed point by point by point. On occasion, he is telling you something that he absolutely has no idea what this means, which makes it difficult. Have you ever tried to describe to someone how the Titan motors run to propel a spacecraft? Kind of out of your realm, isn't it? This is something that Daniel is trying to grasp, and he is writing it down as the Lord instructs him to. It's mainly a summary. A lot of the verbiage that we're going to see, a lot of the references he gives are the same, are very close to the same thing that we saw when we studied Revelation. So these two, this is the revelation of the Old Testament, in case you hadn't figured that out. So as we go through this, we're going to try to see what the Lord would have us to glean from it today. All right, Daniel is asleep on his bed. It is the 3rd year of, oh goodness, what was his name? Belshazzar. As we were reading 1 through 6, we know that Belshazzar was killed in chapter 5. So he has really gone back. He's within the last year of Belshazzar's reign, and he's at night sleeping, this 80-something-year-old man, and he's trying to tell you and me what this dream was about. So the dream continues in chapter 7, verse 13. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion was in an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. The other kingdoms that Daniel has been telling us about had a beginning and had an end, but not this kingdom. Let's go back and look at it in verse 13. One like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. Jesus called himself the Son of Man. It's kind of interesting. In the Gospels alone, it's recorded 80 times. He received all dominion previously held by the beast, and his reign was to be permanent. I like that. An everlasting dominion which should not be passed away. He came up to speak or to stand in front of the Ancient of Days. So what we see, what our man's eyes can see, what our human eyes can see, our human imagination can see, is God the Son standing in front of God the Father. And God the Father is going to honor his Son. And he tells him, he said, and to him was given dominion, glory, a kingdom that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. The entire creation. His dominion is an everlasting dominion without an end, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed, which means eternal. Daniel in 7 verses 15, Daniel tells us how he was feeling as he was seeing this vision. As for me, verse 15, as for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. Daniel, as I've said, was seeing in a lot more detail than he was able to give to you and to me. He really didn't understand everything he saw. And because of this lack of understanding, he was very troubled, very overwhelmed. Verse 16, I approached one of those who were standing by, and I began asking them the exact meaning of all of this. And so he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Would that not have been phenomenal? He within this vision, he saw himself walk up to the one of myriads of beings that were created to worship God, that was there and was watching God the Son stand in front of God the Father. As he watched that, he wanted to know, what does this mean? What does this mean? So can you see him going up to one of the robed entities that had their eyes trained on the throne and maybe tugging on their sleeve or tugging? He had to know. He took the chance of being rebuffed to approach one of these beings and said, help me. I want to understand what I'm seeing. Help me to see what I'm seeing. Tell me. He said, help me to understand the interpretation of these things. These great beasts, which are 4 in number, and the gentleman, I'm going to use the word gentleman, may have been a lady for all I know. This being, this angel, took pity on Daniel, looked at Daniel. I can almost see out of the corner of his eyes that he shifted his gaze back toward the throne, and God the Father gave him a nod. Yes, talk to him. He looked at Daniel and he said, and he began, Daniel began to ask him the exact meaning of all of this. So Daniel says, he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. What things? The great beasts, which were 4 in number, are 4 kings who will rise from the earth. But the saints of the highest one will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, for all ages to come. Daniel says in verse 19, then I desired to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its claws of bronze, which devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and the meaning of the 10 horns that were on its head, and of the other horn which came up, and before which 3 of them fell, namely, that horn which had eyes and a mouth, uttering great boast, and which was larger in appearance than its associates. That's verse 20. Daniel had so many questions, and this, for lack of another term, I'm going to call it an angel. This angel was listening to the questions. Daniel was saying, please tell me who and what these are. What do they represent? What does it mean? I need to know. He was grieved in his soul. He had to know because he knew how important this was to get this right. Daniel was so grieved within his spirit, and he was so anxious. Have you ever been anxious? He wanted to know the answer to the riddle. What do these four kings that arise out of the earth, what does it mean? I think I'd like to ask that too, in a lot of cases. I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and overpowering them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one. And the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. Remember that gap? I said he stopped here and then he restarted over here. Now he's referring back in his questions to the angel. He is saying, what does this all mean? What does this all mean? Tell me what the 10 horns mean, and the little one that came up, and the one that talks and full of boast, and he seems to have more power than the rest of them, and the kingdom that he's over is a cruel and hateful. They're waging war against the saints of God. I see them doing that. They were waging war right up until the Ancient of Times, Ancient of Days, came and took possession of his throne. And when he took possession of his throne, the saints took possession of the kingdom. Explain this to me. Help me to understand. Thus he said, this is the angel, thus he said, the fourth beast will be the fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. That's Rome. That's Rome. Remember dual prophecies? The closest one would be Rome. In Revelation, it would be the revised Rome. Revised Rome. And he says, as for the 10 horns out of his kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them. And this one who arises, he'll be different from the previous ones, and he will subdue 3 kings. Remember when I said 3 kings will voluntarily give up their power to the Antichrist? This is what he's referring to here. Verse 25, talking about the Antichrist. He will speak out against the Most High, and he will swear down the saints of the highest one, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in laws, and they will be given unto his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Where have we heard that? Where have we heard that? He is saying, remember in Daniel chapter 2 when we said they're 10 toes and they're mixed clay and iron? The 10 horns in Daniel 7, in Revelation 13, in Revelation 17 are associated with the last world ruler. There is no good reason to spiritualize what God has said in 4 different places. This is the Antichrist. Okay. This conspicuous horn that comes up out of the allegiance of 10 is the Antichrist. He is the restored, in end times, is the restored Roman Empire. In Duel, in the first time, he's telling Daniel, he said, the Romans, That march in AD 70 will destroy the Israeli nation, the Jewish nation. They will destroy the temple. But that's not the worst. Wait till the end of times. He's describing the Antichrist even better when he says he's boastful. He will say boastful words, pompous words. He will speak against the Most High. He will speak against God in heaven. Dual prophecy. The first time the Roman government will be the one that puts the Son of God to death. And in the end of times, he will put many who believe, the faithful, to death. Shall persecute, I'm looking for when that is, that phraseology. Shall persecute the saints of the Most High. That is in verse 27, the latter part. His kingdom will be all the kingdoms under the whole earth will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. Okay, back up, Gwen, you've made a mistake here. Let's start at the beginning. I think I got ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I do this on occasion, don't I? Yeah. We start in verse 23, and we went through, I read to you 25. This is the Antichrist will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the highest one, and he will intend to make alterations in times of the law, and he will be given unto his hand for a time, times, and time and half a time. He's saying that is a time, one, times, that's two, so it makes three, and a half a time, that makes 3.5. We've talked about this being years, so 3.5 years. He's going to wear them down. He's going to make them believers that this con man, this Antichrist, is going to deceive the world, and he's particularly going to deceive the Hebrew children. And his one goal is to fool them into thinking that he is their Messiah. But the court will sit for judgment on his dominion, and it will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. 26 is telling Daniel, but don't worry, his time is coming. He will be judged, and he will be annihilated, and it will be a forever annihilation. This is the end times. And then in verse 27, then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. At this point, the revelation ended. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarming me, and my face grew pale, and I've kept the matter to myself. Okay. Then the saints shall be given into his hands for 3.5 years. You can find that in Revelations chapter 11, chapter 12, and chapter 13. It's talking refer to half of the 7-year period. And this is also the 70th week of Daniel. They shall take away his dominion, consume it, destroy it forever. In the days of persecution by this blasphemous ruler, the Messiah will establish his kingdom for his people. But his kingdom immediately succeeds the fourth kingdom. We have never had that. We think this is this particular part is not dual because it's not happened yet. We are awaiting this to happen. It is questionable whether the Roman Empire had anything that was too much judgment-wise when it ended the first time, but the second time It will be. Then it says that then the kingdom and dominion, the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole earth shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. So at this point in time, it's when the millennium is happening, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, where all sinners are gone. It's just this 1,000 years is to prove that mankind by himself need a Savior. That even without the influence of Satan and his demons, we still have a heart that will sin. We all again notice that the kingdom and dominion shall be given to the saints. It is something received, not achieved. The church does not convert the world to Jesus' kingdom and give the kingdom to Jesus. He gives it to them. Daniel's troubled reaction that we see in verse 28 is the picture of a man who is in shock. For one thing, in his vision, he could tell to him numerous years had passed. He is seeing the end times that is not going to occur when his people get to go back to Israel. He's going to see it happen many, many years before. He is going to see how bad the earth can get. He has seen how bad the earth can get. He has seen the deprivation, the terrible things that are going to happen. And it was heavy on his soul. It was deeply alarming to him. It was overwhelming to him. He loved his people. And to see, we don't know how long this vision lasted, and we don't know the amount of detail that Daniel saw. But what Daniel saw rocked his core. He was absolutely overwhelmed by it. He grew pale as he thought about what was going to happen in the future. He knew his Lord was going to be triumphant in the end. But what his people had to go through before the end happened was so heavy and so weighty on his heart and mind. And he didn't know how to articulate it, even to his closest friends. He didn't know. He didn't even know how to pray about it here. So his face grew pale, and he just began to withdraw and think about it in his own heart. And I think it was a mercy to Daniel that God had already instructed him. I only want a summary, Daniel. I only want a summary, because so much of this is going to stay hidden. I don't want you to tell everything. I don't want you to show everything. But I want to let you know that in the end, your God is triumphant. Your God is triumphant. Okay, the next time we get together, we'll be studying Daniel 8. I hope you are reading ahead and studying these, because I do not profess to be someone who has Daniel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 in the palm of my hand and full of understanding. It takes a lot of prayer and a lot of work. And I hope that it inspires you to study it. It is fantastic. And when I look at the people involved and I think of us, we know we've had the opportunity to read Revelation. We've had the opportunity to study it. Are you doing your utmost to tell someone else so that they don't have to go through this? They can be counted as one of God's children. Who do you want to escape what you've been reading? I hope you have a good week. Goodbye.